Thank you for joining me today. I have my friends here, Beth and Kyndel, and it's an honor to have them here to talk about homeschooling their kids with Jesus. This was not my journey. I would have had to have a neon light shining in my face telling me to homeschool my kids, and that wasn't the plan. So I truly honor and respect anyone who does homeschooling, and I'm excited to talk to them and for you to hear their stories. So we will get started with my first question is, how did you get into homeschooling?
Is it bad to start off the podcast by saying Kendall's a big part of it?
No, not at all. Not at all. Camaraderie.
Yes, I think God was very gracious in knowing I couldn't do it alone, that a friend helped pull me all the way in. Yes, I think starting out, so my son is in third grade, but starting out was COVID years. And so I think that also helped me have to get over the hurdle of fear in that of, well, I don't really want the in and out of school. And so it felt easy at that age to be like, well, we can talk phonetics, at the breakfast table. Let's start there. And that, I think that was just God's mercy, because I was interested in it, but I was so afraid, intimidated. It just felt really intimidating. And that small steps inside really pulled me in.
Yeah, I have to echo, having a partner, someone to do school alongside of, it would, it's so helpful. I think it makes a huge difference, just someone to, share your sorrows and your joys with in the journey. But I was homeschooled, so the idea wasn't foreign to me, but I also had so much fear. I definitely am a perfectionist, and I just thought, I'm going to ruin my children. Even though it was a desire that I had, I was like, I'm going to fail them. I know I will. And it's kind of funny because I think I'm a closet competitive person, because I had been bemoaning to my husband, I just don't know. I think I can't do it. And he finally, I need to ask him if this was an intentional strategy, but he goes, yeah, I don't think you can. He said this to me.
Oh my gosh.
He knew that I needed to dig deep. I think he did it on purpose, honestly. And I got so mad. And I said, well, why not? Why don't you think? He was like, because you're doubting yourself so much and you're so back and forth. And I got so mad. I was like, I'm doing it. It was like the push I needed to realize it's what I really wanted. I think when someone was like, well, can you? And I was like, well, yes, I can. And so that was kind of the push I needed. And COVID, yeah, definitely. That made it an easier choice as well. But I really had to dig deep to even make the leap to jump in.
I would love to make the point that both of them were homeschooled growing up and had to decide between putting their kids in school and homeschooling and what they would do differently. From when you guys grew up, how you were homeschooled. I mean, there wasn't as many resources. You didn't have internet. You didn't have things at your fingertips compared to what you were doing for your kids now. How does that look different for you?
I think, my mom was a teacher and she never wanted to homeschool. She shared your Lord, if we're going to homeschool, you need to show me. And he happened to lead us that direction. But she really did school in a very similar way it would have been done in a public school setting, which would be more of the traditional textbook driven work. And so my experience as a homeschooler, while it had a lot of homeschool elements, it also was very similar to what I would have gotten, except that it was a Christian curriculum, but it was very similar to how she would have taught in a classroom. And I think one of the differences now is that you can really dive in and decide what kind of vein of education you feel like meets your family's needs. And so there's so many exciting options that make it a lot easier to choose, because I wouldn't say the way that I was taught as a homeschool student was like my favorite way of learning. It was a lot of memorizing and that sort of thing. And so when I saw that there's so many resources for narrative-based learning, play-based learning for the early ages, where you're using a lot more art and motion, and there was just like exciting possibilities. And there's just so much more information and so many more resources where you can pick what's best for your kids and what excites you. That helped me a ton. Like, that was very exciting. Like, that made me excited to homeschool. I didn't really want to do the normal, because what I remember from homeschool, the things that I remember the most were the stories and the narratives, not the memorization of facts. And so that's really changed a lot. My mom is always amazed at what's out there now.
I think for me, I would say similar of like the style of learning, because I think maybe it was just that way growing up. This is how you learn, and you get a book and you take tests, and it looks very formal and proper, and it's exciting being able to follow avenues of, well, you're really interested in this. How can we dive into this? Learn about it. And that can be very simple, like even playing a game or something that ties into whatever subject they're interested in. And it doesn't necessarily look like a book that we're reading or they're being read to. I think that really excites me in the difference. And I have to give my parents credit in this. They did a really good job. And if I could imitate, I know that's not the question you asked, but if I could imitate, they pulled in people to surround us with a community of, I mean, my mom's friend was a doctor, and her son like loved to find things in the backyard. And so we like dissected a squirrel, and we like, you know, things like that happened. I don't know how it was said, but
I think I'd be dissecting a squirrel.
I mean, they just like she was great at pooling resources of good. Like, this is your strong suit. Teach my kid your strong suit. And that was amazing for me as a kid to see different people have different strengths, and each one of them was invested in us and getting an education. That was very good. Very cool.
So as you guys went on this journey for homeschooling, tell everybody that their kids are elementary age, and so they're in that stage of life, which is very busy. In this process and journey with God, how have you seen your relationship with God and seen His provision and, you know, relationship with Him, but also feeling His covering, His love, and for you and your kids as you're journeying with them, because you spend the most time with them, and also kind of mentoring them into a relationship with God as well in the process. But what has it been personally for you first? And then we can talk about your kiddos, just of how you've seen God love you, how it's changed you.
The first thing that comes to my mind is it is humbling, and not in like a horrible way, is homeschooling puts me in a situation with my kids that challenges and pushes me. And I can guarantee you I do not always do well.
But you're not perfect.
We have some hard moments. And I think one of the things that continually amazes me, even in the hard moments, God's grace will cover it. And somehow out of the hard and into like, we're in this together. You know, even though we have these hard moments, there's like still love and joy on the other side. And the fact that he can do that is like miraculous to me, because I feel like, man, I have a lot of shortcomings. I I really would like some extra doses of patience without the lessons.
Right? Wouldn't we all?
But the fact that he can bring so much good in the midst of it, and even in those hard moments, yeah, exactly what I said. You pull us out, Lord, and that we're better on the other side, you know?
Going through it and discovering, it's kind of that, like you take a step back and you're like, oh, this is what you were doing.
Yes. And he, teaching me, you know, communication and teaching my kids communication or learning things about myself and learning things about my kids in the process that I don't know if I would have learned had I not been doing this with them, you know? I think that's a way that I see his hand so graciously over it, because there are days I wake up and I'm like, my kids are going to hate me. They must just think, or they're going to wake up and be bitter with me one day or something. And the fact that his grace covers it and we can still laugh throughout the day is pretty miraculous.
I think as a parent, our kids teach us more. If we're open to it, they can teach us more about who we are and who we need to become than most people around us. And who they need us to become, especially when you're with them all day like that. And in the early years, little and hanging out with them all day, they definitely teach you about who you are.
I think there's so many things. Like, I just have so many things going through my mind, but I think maybe we've all experienced this, and you just sort of spoke to it, that like, for me, as I see my kids as they grow and develop at the different ages, it actually like stirs memories and things that you felt at that age. I don't know if there's anything more like motivating than being in relationship with your children to have you want to heal those places. And I think that is something that maybe I didn't expect going into it, that God uses my kids to heal things in my heart. It's not like it can be very messy. I mean, yes. But the idea that like, an example, watching my son, he's also in third grade, want to do things perfectly, and realizing like, that's probably a piece of him, but I also have probably influenced that. And then turning that mirror on myself and being like, that is something that I had as a child and I have now. And it makes me want to dive in and heal those places, because I want to give my son the tools to not let that rule his life. And I think that is so God's mercy. Watching my daughter, I really struggle with people pleasing. And the more I become aware of it, the more you realize how much it holds you back and like cloaks your authenticity really of who you are. And my daughter is a very free spirit. She's not really motivated by that. And her kindness is so, like, it makes me cry. Her kindness is so genuine. And she's only in first grade, but watching her, it's like I get a picture from God of what it looks like to just have genuine kindness that isn't motivated by self-protection. And it's just really so beautiful, because while the minutes and hours you get with your children, sometimes I just feel like I have nothing left and I lose my patience, and I'm like, is this hurting our relationship more than it's helping? Experiences that you get to have together because you just are going deep. Like, you really don't have much of a choice. You get to know each other so well. And my kids will call me out and be like, Mom, your tone is ugly right now. And you can see your kids shutting down. And there's like no greater accountability. No. I mean, and it is so humbling and it's so in your face, and it can be really discouraging. But, I kind of threw my husband under the bus, saying, he was like, I don't think you can do it. And I think he knew I could. And he's such a good reminder at the end of the day when I feel like, but they don't know how to read, because I don't do well with the up and down of learning. Like, it's not perfect. And he'll remind me like, okay, they're fine, but also think of all the things they're learning, like conflict resolution and figuring out what you need and saying it. And those really beautiful things that I value so much. And so that is also what we're learning in school. It's not just about the academics. And I think that is what keeps me going, is like these things that I really value to learn for myself and I want my kids to be equipped in. Those are the things happening in like the nitty gritty, messy moments, of life together, because we're always together.
Yes, it is. It's 24/7. I mean, and to organize yourselves into, we're going to do school now, we're not going to organize all that as well. I think when you're parenting in general, homeschooling has got to be even more so, is the, yes, I messed up as your parent. Like, I got upset. And the fact that if you apologize and explain, just go, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have raised my voice. I should have talked through this better with you, is an example of how they can deal with conflict resolve, right? My kids are older. I have 2 out of school, and I still have 1 in school, and I did not homeschool, so bless you. Even the thought of it stresses me out.
Me too.
But your kids are lovely. So fun. So we kind of talked about it a little bit, of kind of the hard things about it. In partnering, what I have heard you guys say is that it is a partnership with God and going daily with the Holy Spirit, being able to learn your kids, learn who they are, and encourage them in the ways that they're discovering their gifts and discovering who they are. Incredible, because with me sending them away, like, I can see it, but I don't get that time that could be there to discover it with them and have the fun, of discovering that and seeing the ahas and seeing the everyday, oh, I did that, because it's fun. It's fun to see those light bulbs turn on and really be interested in learning. Yeah, so we've kind of talked about hard. You could talk a little bit more if things, if you think of something that you kind of struggled with that maybe you've overcome, which I know you guys have, but also what has been the most rewarding thing in deciding to do homeschool.
I think one of the many reasons we chose to homeschool is just like more play and less school, especially in the early years. And I think that's one of the things that has been just such a gift, like being outside and being in nature. And as a child, that meant a lot to me. That was sort of the childhood I was given. I just wanted them to be young as long as they could. And that has been such a gift to watch. And because my son and daughter are together all the time, like the friendship that they have is really beautiful. And I'm really grateful for that. And I know that homeschooling has been a part of building that. So that has really been a gift. And I think also one of the really big reasons was I wanted my husband and I we both did be kind of the first answer or the first voice on some of the really important topics of life. And I think there's like research that's gone into like kind of that first voice, that first opinion, that first information you hear is kind of what you weigh everything else against. And it just felt like such a privilege and a gift to hopefully be kind of that first voice on some of the really important things that your kids are discovering in those early years. And so that's been really precious to me. As well as just the flexibility of what works for our family and getting time together or visiting extended family or having adventures is you can learn in any location and kind of having a lifestyle of learning, which I wouldn't say is my natural tendency, but homeschool is so set up for that. And it's helped me to grow and learn because really I am learning alongside my kids. Honestly, like I get so excited about space science because I don't remember.
Yeah, right.
And so I think it's helping me change my life in the sense of like want to be more of a lifelong learner. And I don't know that I would have continued that if it hadn't been for kind of the homeschool environment where it's a little forced, like that's been a gift.
That's such a good point of learning alongside your kids. I remember I was reading this story to my son. We were doing a history lesson, and bless him, I was reading about when the Berlin Wall fell, and it was such a good story, but I was sobbing. I was just a mess. I was like, this is incredible. And my son was just looking at me like, Mom, are you okay? I had forgotten so many things. So that is rewarding of learning alongside. I think Kyndel touched on a lot of the points of, as someone who was homeschooled all the way through, the relationship that I have with my siblings is so strong. And I truly don't think we would have that without that background of being together and learning we are so different. Could not be more different. But we learned how to communicate and appreciate and love the things in each other, regardless of all the more surface differences. And that is something where a lot of days I'm like, is it anywhere? But by God's mercy and grace, that will be a sown reward, hopefully. Please, Jesus. But I also just see, the other day we were sitting down to do school, and we usually start school by either doing a devotional or reading part of the Bible or whatever. And I felt like the Lord just put it on my heart to not do that and just sit down and say, tell me your questions. Tell me your questions about God, or we've been talking about this in the Bible or whatever. And let's just sit down and talk about these questions. And my daughter, she's in kindergarten, was asking me the most incredible questions that I was like, I can't believe you're asking me this. And then I get to have these conversations with my kindergartner. Was so exciting to me of like, man, this is what I'm after. This is the culture that I want. We're just in it together. These are lifelong skills and gifts. And so that is a huge reward in my mind as well. And then if I'm being totally honest, in a lot of ways, I'm clinging to, there's this verse in Isaiah, it says, your children will be taught by the Lord. And I pray that all the time because I feel so insufficient. Right. And I'm like, but how hopeful is that of like God fill in the gaps where I have missed? And I think all of us as parents, no matter what schooling or whatever that looks like, just that hope that God's going to meet them in those places where I'm not seeing or my husband's not seeing. But that's a promise that I will hold on to.
Yes. No, that's so good. Yeah, it reminds me when my kids were little, I came across this saying that it's just a simple prayer, really, of God, I did my best today, and where I didn't fill all of their need and their love, will you fill them up for the day? Like, will you be that filler of the cup for the things that I missed or the things I didn't do? And I think that was really helpful for me, just to go, okay, God, they're yours, and here you go. I need you to fill them up because I know I will not be fully ever who they need me to be, and how I would love to love them because I'm human, but you can love them perfectly. And if they're filled with your perfect love, then we're okay. We can start over tomorrow. Right?
New mercies.
New mercies every morning. Actually, we've been talking about that a lot lately with my 15-year-old. That we learned from yesterday. Start over today. Yeah. We're just get a new day. So the other question I think what some people wonder about is like a community, for you guys when you're at home all day, what does that look like for you? Like with activities, with church, and just getting out and doing stuff, and having friendships and community around you. What have you guys built, or kind of where is your community in the midst of it?
I think like Beth already mentioned, like because we kind of started the homeschooling journey together, it's such a great like built-in way to have people to walk alongside. And it's interesting because I was homeschooled because we lived so remotely and we didn't have a good school system or any of those things, but we did work at a camp. And so we had families around us that just happened to homeschool as well. So we had a small group. And so that's kind of like in my mind what I'm used to. But I've been so amazed that here there are so many resources. And I think for me, I'm pretty introverted. So I have to like weigh, what do my kids need? Like each of them individually. My son needs practice going into new situations. And so a homeschool group that has enrichment classes is like very useful for him to practice those things. And I think being intentional and being like, what do each of my kids need? And then looking for the things that will help them grow and enrich what they're doing. But also one of the beautiful things about homeschooling is our last year, we've moved 3 times. And there's been a lot of instability and change in our family. And homeschooling was the stable thing that stayed the same. Yeah. And we did a lot of growing on our own because we were living remotely again. And it's just so interesting how God provides what you need in the season you're in. And now that we're back sort of established in a place with resources, I've had to like revamp my thinking of, okay, we're back and now what do we need? And I think even with homeschooling, asking God every season, like, is this still what you have for us? Is this still the best for my daughter specifically? Is this still the best for my son specifically? Because I could see how it can be isolating because you are at home, you're at home all day together. And so I personally have to really make an effort to be like, okay, what do we need to be in? And so that's a journey for me in growth as well, of looking for where we're going to invest our time and strategizing and being intentional, for our family culture and for each of the little hearts that I'm like shepherding. And so,
because I grew up homeschooled, a lot of people, especially when I was a kid, would be like, you homeschool? Do you even know how to talk to people? But like I said, my parents were great at pulling in their friend groups or whoever it was, asking around church, who knows how to teach English and things like that. And so I never saw, because I experienced it, I never saw homeschooling as a lack of community, ever. I felt lucky. I felt like the luckiest kid in the world. I have 4 extra adults that are invested in me on a regular basis. And, some of them had kids as well, and we were friends. So there was always things going on. So I think because I experienced that now, being the one homeschooling my kids, I don't see it as even something to overcome. Like, I see it as, this is such a cool opportunity to give my kids experiences outside of the box. Mm-hmm. My kids sometimes hang out with adults. They can have conversations with adults, and
they hang out with me.
Yeah, they love you. My daughter asked why she couldn't come with me today, and so, something that my mom was really good at is stepping into volunteer. Or we have this extra time. How can we use this extra time as a way to bless others? And I love that. I think that it goes with me, with whatever we do, and my perspective of what our days shaped like. Or And God's so good to bring in. He knows what each of my kids needs. And so whether that looks like the provision of a family moves into the neighborhood that has kids the same age. And so, or, an event at church creates a new friendship or things like that. He's faithful. He's faithful to provide that. And both of my kids are very different, and including in their social needs and what they want. And like Kyndel said, the resources are, out of this world. And the amount of sport programs that you're able to be in, homeschooled or not, or, whatever your interests might be, I get overwhelmed. I honestly will shut down because I'm like, there are too many choices. Yeah. How do we find the right one? And that, I'm so thankful for that.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you said, Beth, about like how you got to hang out with adults and you had adults invested in your life and kids of different ages. And I think just to piggyback that, I just totally agree with that. And that's something that is so cool. I was like a children and family ministries major in college, but one thing that my professor that oversaw that program was really passionate about was intergenerational ministry. And the idea that we really maybe shouldn't be separating and just keeping all this age together. And, you have the older couples groups and the singles. And that's one thing that's so naturally built into homeschool. And I think it's so kingdom. It feels so like kingdom to be having, my son learn how to play with younger children and also older people. And he loves visiting with adults and hanging out as well. And it's really precious. And I think it's something that gets a little lost in some of even our churches or schools. And of course, there's like positives to being with your age group and having that camaraderie. But I think something that's just naturally built into homeschool is you really are interacting with all ages. And I see that as being really enriching for my kids. And I felt that growing up as well. Growing up at a camp is I was just so comfortable interacting with the college students that came in, and I felt really loved. And I think it kind of opens this door of we're all together in this, and you don't have to just hang out with the third graders. You can like invest in people of every age, like you have something to offer, and also you can receive from people of every age. And that's something that's so cool that has kind of, I don't know, I think that's really impacted our family.
Yeah, I think at any age to be able to, like for my kids who are older, to be able to relate to kids who are younger and be able to have a good conversation with an adult and being mentored are just so valuable. And to practice, always practice, and then have conversations of, hey, what'd you think? Like, did you enjoy that? Did you not? Actually, when you were talking, it made me think about these experiments, and I don't know if there's homes yet, but they've combined nursing homes with daycares, and because they just love each other, and they're sometimes on the same mindset, but I just love seeing them interact because they both light up and they both love being with each other, and they can just love, teach each other from an age gap that just seems not helpful, but it totally is, like to bring that back into their lives. And then there's a new show that has teenagers hanging out with senior citizens. Oh my gosh. It just, like, I started crying because I was like, oh, this is lovely, because even the senior citizens they're not in a nursing home. It's just for them to like get to know somebody who's older. And the seniors are like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't get teenagers today, but then they do specific tasks together and really start understanding each other and enjoying it, having conversations. And it's just really neat to see. And I do think as a culture, like you said, we are missing a lot of that. We're missing the intergenerational exchanges that are really, really good. Because, even with broken homes, a lot of people are by themselves and not purposely. It's just they don't have that relationship with their parents, or they're not around, but to create community that is like family, of course, is always important. But I have seen you guys do it really well. So I will say that they do it well. And especially they're in neighborhoods that have a ton of young kids. And I think that's very helpful when you're raising kids to have the neighborhoods that are full of kids in the street. And you learn a lot of life lessons and a lot of tears coming in screaming. And yeah, good conversations come out of that. In wrapping it up a little bit, maybe just a short little thing of how your relationship with God and his love, like either how you have experienced or felt his love, and we've talked a little bit about it, and you can refer to something you said, or what has made you love him more in this experience?
I think one of the things that has made me realize how great the Father's love for us is being with my kids 24/7.
And how much you put with us.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And the fact that his love for me is so great, and he's always with us, and that he always invites us into his presence, no matter what the day has held, is something that is an astounding picture to me, because, man, it is constant. And but there's this rhythm of, these moments where it might be messy, but we're learning these really good lessons. And then you kind of ebb out of that moment and go into these other moments, but you're present for all of it. And I think with my relationship with the Lord, I can be really serious. He's just present all the time. And to step into those moments when I'm laughing with my kids, of realizing like the Lord is laughing right along with us, or do you know what I'm saying? He delights in all of those aspects, and it doesn't have to look like this when I spend time with him. It can be a ever-present constant. I think that has probably been the thing that spoke loudest to me of his love.
That's so good. I'm actually having a hard time with this question. I think it all feels so enmeshed, life and homeschool. It's almost not even separate. But I think one thing that I have bumped up against most recently is, I think what I often become overwhelmed with is you're with your kids 24/7. We've stated that several times. It's a big challenge, but their needs, they have needs, both of them. And I think and I can get overwhelmed by that, but at the same time, I have this overwhelming desire to meet their needs. It's it's a tension for sure. And I think, this is very, very recent. I hope I can even put it into words, but through some of my therapy and story work, realizing that I have silenced a lot of needs in my own heart, and that contributes to me being overwhelmed by other people's needs. And so I think in God's kindness, as I encounter my kids' needs, and kids are able, they learn to hide their needs. That's not natural for them. They know what they need. And I don't know, coming face to face with that, I am oh my goodness, this is beautiful that you can state what you need. And why can't I do that? God is using that in my life, because if you aren't aware of what you need, you're really silencing or numbing your heart in ways. And so I think, and you're also making yourself smaller. And kids don't make themselves small. They learn that, down the road. And so I think most currently I am I don't want to teach them to make themselves smaller. And so I need to learn how to not make myself smaller, and to be in touch with what I need and to stand up for it. And I don't think I would actually even have to stand up that hard. It feels hard to me. It feels hard to me. And so, and just recognizing that God isn't overwhelmed. He isn't overwhelmed by our need, and he loves for us to bring our deepest need to him. And I want to model that for my kids, but I can't do that until I am receiving that from God and realizing that in my own heart. So, I think like most recently, that's the work that God's been doing. So.
All right. So I want to ask all my guests, what book or worship song has been impactful for you lately? And just because I love to learn and I love new things, and if there's something out there that I haven't heard of yet, I just, we'll share the goodness.
Okay. Also, I do have to say that you inspire me with like your desire to learn. Like I feel like that's really helped me a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, so the song I'm loving is called Eden, Amanda Cook. Yeah. And the line in it that gets me, she says, "You make Edens out of wastelands." As like a perfectionist and people pleaser, it is like so good to rest in that. Like, it doesn't really matter in the end because God is just in the business of making beautiful things. Yes. And the idea that Eden is a place where we encounter him. And so like his goal in making Edens out of wastelands is to be near us and to be with us and in every possible way. And I just think it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And then the book I just finished, I have to preface this. I don't read intense books. Like I read light historical fiction, but somehow like this book was recommended to me, and it's called Nonviolent Communication by Dr. Rosenbaum. Ooh. And he's a psychologist, and it sounds kind of weird, but the premise is just that anger and violence really comes from unmet needs. So this has been just speaking to me. And it's the idea that you can always hear a need behind a statement, whether it's harsh or angry, and you find that need in that other person and speak to that with empathy. And, but you also have to know what you need and be able to say it. And he has so many examples of people struggling to put into words what they need. And it takes practice, and you really can't be in intimate relationship until you're able to articulate those needs so that person can say whether they can meet that or not. And so it was kind of mind-blowing. And honestly, like, I think I would have to do a whole class to even like add it into life. Yeah. Like it's a lot to change your thinking. Yeah. But it was really fascinating, and definitely like kind of put a fire in me to help my kids learn to articulate what they need instead of expressing it just in anger and frustration. Just the idea that anger and frustration coming out is he calls it a tragic expression of an unmet need. And he talks about looking for the humanity in every person and not using any kind of label, positive or negative, to communicate to a person. You're just looking for the need in your common humanity. It's really beautiful, very inspiring, but kind of intense. And now I need to read some like historical nonfiction. Yeah.
I go between them. I usually swap. Like I'll do one self-help, one fun. And yeah. But thank you. That sounds like an amazing book. I wrote it down.
Okay. The song I have on repeat lately is it's called Sound Mind by Brian and Katie Torwell.
Song.
It is so good. And it has become just like I don't know if you guys have heard of the concept of breath prayers, but you like say a little phrase as you breathe in and pray a little phrase as you breathe out. And that song has become like my constant because my mind is a mess, you guys. And it just draws me back into the peace that is constant with the Lord. And sound mind for a spirit of fear, sound mind so that I can see clear. Sound mind, the Spirit is here. Just such a good thing to just pull my heart, calm myself down. And so can't get enough of that. And then I'm not serious. I just finished the book Giver of Stars by Jojo Mars. It is so good.
So good.
It's so good. So I'm going to be taking these book recommendations. Same. I try to mix it up, serious and fun, but man, that was a good book.
That's amazing. Yeah, I usually have one like physical book I'm reading, one on Kindle and one on Audible.
Yes.
So it depends on where I'm at, which book I'm reading or listening to.
Yes.
So yeah, I love all of our options. It can be overwhelming, but it's really good. Well, I am so excited that you guys did this with me, and very grateful for your lives, for your friendship, and you are doing really well. You are, and I observe that and just admire you greatly for your lives and how you live with God, and just find it a privilege to do some life with you. So
grateful for you.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm trying not to cry. But yes, these are very precious friends of mine, and I'm just very grateful that we got this done.